Hi, everyone. Welcome to Redemption Plus You, an educational conversation designed to help maximize your redemption business. I'm partnering today with three operators and industry professionals who have a lot of experience with a really interesting topic, hot one to talk about in any game room, cranes and merchandisers. I am so excited to hear what they have to say and what we'll learn from their expertise. So today we have with us Lisa Westerman from Austin's Park and Pizza, Lisa Price from Family Entertainment Group, and Howard McCullough from Pinnacle Entertainment Group. Thank you guys so much for joining. I'm really pleased that you're here with me today. So I'll just start it off. Let's get to know each other a little bit. If you guys could just go around and introduce yourself and share a little bit about what you do and where you're at. And Lisa Westerman, let's kick off with you.
Hey there, my name's Lisa Westerman. I am officially the Senior Entertainment Director at Austin's Park in Austin, Texas, actually Pflugerville, but we're right north of Austin. Basically, I'm the game tech and the games manager for the entire park. So that's what I do is I fix things and I set up and order the prizes for the cranes and merchandisers, and I help with the redemption ordering also. So a lot of hats.
All right. Keeps you busy. And how many cranes and merchandisers do you have in your facility?
Well, at this point, we have, I think, 40 cranes with about 58 crane stations altogether and 10 merchandisers with 12 merchandiser stations.
My goodness.
There's a lot of product.
A lot of machines, a lot of product.
Yep.
That's awesome. Okay, well, thank you. And Lisa Price, let's move on to you.
I am VP of Merchandise and Marketing for Family Entertainment Group, being with them about 16 years now. We have 80 some locations, so we operate hundreds of cranes, and I oversee the program for Instant Win and Redemption both.
How do you have a rough idea of how many machines that is over all your locations?
Hundreds. I have no idea. Yeah, we about 25% of our population or our game population is Instant Win. So we're pretty heavy into cranes.
You've got a lot. Okay. And then last but not least, we have Howard McCullough. Howard?
I'm Howard McCullough with Pinnacle Entertainment Group. We're a consulting firm helping facilities to add arcades or optimize the arcades they have. So we oversee, right now we have about 30 locations that we're working with on a regular basis, and combined they have probably 300 cranes. And in a previous life, we ran a route with about 500 cranes and merchandisers. So I grew up running cranes. That was the 90% of our business at that time.
So all three of you, I mean, between the three of you, we've got hundreds and hundreds of cranes here to talk about. So I think that we'll have some really great insight from you guys. And thank you for sharing it. So we'll kind of kick off and let's talk about crane performance. So Lisa Price, you mentioned that about 25% of your machines are the cranes and merchandisers Instant Win. How do those kind of rank within your overall game room performance?
So what we typically like to see is for that to balance. So if we have 25% in a population in the room, we want to see it contributing about 25% of the revenue for the location. And things have changed over the years with attractions coming in and cannibalizing a lot of those offerings and being so beautiful, that they absolutely attract the attention. So, and depending on what kind of product mix we have and where the machines are located in the game room, but 25% is usually the target goal for the revenue.
Okay. So Howard, how does that kind of work with the group of customers that you help?
Very similar. We use the same category balancing. I would add that cranes are great long-term because you can use the same machine for a long time. If you keep them working, you can change the product, make them look new, keep the lights working. So compared to a redemption game, you don't have to reinvest in, they're cheaper in the beginning and you don't have to reinvest as often. So that 25% is outsized in value over time, I would say, compared to redemption in video games.
It's a really good point.
That's so interesting. I would have never considered that. Lisa Westerman, what about you guys? How does Crane Performance rank within your game mix?
Well, we have between cranes and merchandisers is about 27% of what's the actual physical equipment that we have. And that's about 25% of revenue pretty consistently. And we like to keep it that way basically for the same reason. You know, if you have that much percentage in your game room, you want that revenue. And our payout is approximately that also. Our cost of sales goal for the park includes our redemption, but our payout on the cranes, we want to keep about 25% of that revenue.
What are some of your top performing machines?
Oh my goodness. We have a big one crane, a big one extreme, that is almost consistently in the top 5 games, sometimes #1. And we used to have 16-inch Squishmallows in it at about $18 pop. And now we have 16-inch knobby balls in it at about $3 pop. And it makes just as much money. And people win more often and people are much happier. So that's what we're keeping in there.
One of my favorite phrases when we talk about game room and redemption is that winners make players. So like you just said, having your guests be able to win more often probably creates a lot more smiles and makes them happier too.
Yep.
Howard, what do you see as some of the top performing machines for your clients?
So I would say, well, ticket cranes, I would say are #1. I also consider those to be a redemption game, not a crane, just to make it somewhat confusing. So if we're not talking about tickets, then giant knobby ball. I'm looking at a report right now for this is just for one chain, but giant knobby balls are #1. Ducks are #2. It's a 4-station duck crane, so it's kind of unfair, but that's a really good item. And then the Belly Buddy crane is up there. Belly Buddy plush.
So just a really cute plush with a happy little face that just everyone wants to make friends with.
Yeah, it's not licensed. It's outperforming a licensed crane, actually. It's just cheaper. So same thing as Lisa W was talking about. You can have a higher win rate with a themed generic that's not as expensive as licensed. Sometimes some licenses are worth what they cost. In this location, they're not.
That's really super interesting. Okay, Lisa Price, what are some of your top performing machines and what kind of product do you tend to run in those machines?
So for machines, we see right now Fantastic Prizes, those really big, cut are pretty king. And right now the product in those would either be a Stanley Cup or a giant Mario or anything in the Mario license. So those two are kind of key, but we also see big one cranes always perform really well. We typically run balls out of that. That way we can constantly have kids walking around with, the giant 18 balls. So, and then we do really good with E-Claws still. Fantastic earnings out of an E-Claw. You can dial them in so precise. You can put any price level in there. Licenses would still be Nintendo and Minecraft and Bluey and the things that we've typically seen do well last year too. Squishmallow.
Squishmallows for sure. So something interesting, and now I'm going off topic here, so we're off-roading a little bit, but Lisa Price, something interesting that you guys do with your machines, I've seen in a bunch of locations. In fact, I was just at the Wisconsin Dells Kalahari this week, and I saw some of your machines. You always do a really fun job of putting like stickers and decals and things in the backs of those machines to kind of theme out with the product in there. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So we kind of played with that early on as far as making each little instant win its own store. So we treat each instant win as like almost like a Macy's display window. And we switch out the decor for the prize. So what we've gotten into actually is in our office here in lovely Norwalk, Ohio, which is real close to Cedar Point. We got a large printer and we print out what we call a planogram poster. So it'll either have decor elements and we'll tell them where to order those, or we'll actually just ship them out a poster that matches their product.
It really looks fun and kind of elevates that machine. And I love the way you put it of treating it like it's its own store. I never thought of it that way. Lisa Westerman, I know that you have done some really cool things with not so much decorating your cranes, but like finding creative ways to display things. So like, for example, you put the tension rods in the backs of the machines to kind of show off some prizes. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, sure. A lot of the cranes actually have shelves in the back, but a lot of them don't. So the ones that don't, we put the tension curtain rods in so that we can hang the plush or sit the plush back there so that it displays better rather than just having a big mirror back there. Because we change out products sometimes very frequently and doesn't pay for us to kind of try to make something. Although I really like having the store idea. That's really a cool idea. So I might actually steal that. But yeah, we like to have things. I've used little suction cups hooks also in the back to hang things sometimes, and occasionally we'll hang things from the back cross rod if it's just a support rod and it doesn't have the crane on it. So it just really depends on the piece.
Do you, and this goes for anybody, do you find once you kind of decorate these cranes and give them a personality or sort of up the display level, do they perform better than if you just had the mirror?
Oh, 100%. Absolutely.
We actually did a study on that, and we put an undecorated game with a pretty even earning license, pretty consistent earner. And on this other side did the undecorated crane against the decorated crane with really comparable licenses, and the decorated crane outperforms all the time, every time.
Really? That is so interesting. Wow. It sounds like a lot of operators should start getting a little bit more creative and setting up these little storefronts in their machines. So one of the things you mentioned, Lisa Westerman, is you change out product pretty frequently. How often do you decide to change out product?
Well, initially when I first came on board here, it was in the middle of COVID, and you just had like a 30% fill rate from your suppliers. So you had to be creative and just, we'll fill this time, and then we'll fill that. So we don't always keep the same product in the crane. Some we do, like our big E-Claws, our E-Claw Cosmics. We always have the logoed basketballs in one, and the other one we have Nintendo license plush, the 16-inch. That does so well. Once in a while, we'll flip that out with some jungle animals because they're every bit as popular, or some Care Bears. But the licensed cranes, we try to leave the licenses in, like Hello Kitty crane and the Smurf crane. But a lot of them, we'll say, we have belly buddies, and we don't have that belly buddy. Well, let's put this item in or that item in. So because we have so many cranes with the same size claw, we can easily do that. And sometimes we'll find that an item that doesn't go well on one area of the park does really well in another area in a similar size crane. So that's just kind of dialing that in.
Oh, really interesting. Howard, how do you recommend a certain cadence to your clients, or hear from them as how often they switch out their product?
Yeah, it depends somewhat on the type of location. Like when we were in Walmart, where it's the same people go every week in a lot of cases. It's a lot different than an FEC, so we were changing it like at least once a month, more like every 3 weeks. But then in an FEC, typically once every other month. But as Lisa W was saying, some items like the giant knobby balls are going to stay in there. We might change up, the design of them a little bit. So ideally, someone is tracking the cranes, which can only really be done manually. Like you can't automate it like Ticket Redemption. If you want to know what's in the cranes and how they're performing, ideally, if you're focused on it, and a really good hourly person can do this if they're managed, when the sales start to tail off and you rotate it out. And so that's the best way to do it. But as a rule of thumb, between 30 and 60 days.
Okay. Lisa Price, what are your thoughts?
I'm going to fall in between, like Howard and like Lisa both. We have neighborhood joints, and then we have vacation places where people come once a year or, not as frequently. So those neighborhood joints, depending on the license, will monitor performance pretty heavily. And also if the license has some variation, like there's a new series and there's new characters, or is it the same character over and over again? So we'll monitor performance first. That's always going to be key. The percentage of contribution to the overall earning is what we watch, because not all locations are apples to apples, even with the same licenses. And then we also have variations between, we have locations that are in Texas, and what does well in Texas does not do well, in Poconos, Pennsylvania. So we're constantly monitoring it. And we have a person at every location that is in charge of the merchandise and the performance and monitoring payouts. And then the central office here monitors the entire company performance and all of the options that go into that. So it's a lot of keep your eye on it.
It sounds like, there's not an exact answer. Of course, every location's different, but it sounds generally like once game performance starts to decline a little bit, then it's time to switch it up.
Yeah.
How do you all feel about seasonal merchandise in cranes, like your Halloween or, Christmas merchandise? What are your thoughts on putting those into machines? Howard?
I like it generally. Yeah, it's always tricky because some things that are very blatantly for a holiday, if you get stuck with it, it looks really bad. It looks really bad to have Christmas stuff the day after Christmas, or certainly the day after New Year's. So I, in the past, tried to do things like zombies at Halloween, where you can kind of keep using them, or a spring mix that works for Easter, but it's not an Easter bunny. That winter mix, and maybe you put in some Christmas stuff like right Thanksgiving weekend to make sure it's gone. So I love it, but you have to be careful not to overdo it, because you're going to store it for a year. And I definitely think you need to take it out right after the holiday if you have something that's obvious for holiday, because it just looks really bad, and store it or give it away or something.
Yeah, walking into any center in June or July that's got Santa Claus sticking around anywhere, just looks sloppy and like someone's not paying attention.
And no one can win, right? If it's still there.
Yeah.
Why would you play the machine?
Exactly. Lisa Westerman, do you guys do seasonal merchandise? And if so, kind of what's your strategy?
I do very limited seasonal merchandise, just for the same reasons that George had mentioned. Although Christmas, I'm a little bit easier going about, because we do pull it out, but then we sometimes will do a Christmas in July crane where we just go over the top with Christmas in there. We'll put snowflakes and stuff, so it's, Christmas in July, in that one crane or two cranes. But for the most part, very limited on seasonal merchandise, unless it's something looks a little more generic and not holiday specific, because you can theme a crane for, the fall holidays, and the stuff will look great unless it's Santa Claus or a turkey or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And that way you're not stuck storing merchandise for a long period of time, or, just putting it on the bottom of the crane like we used to do at some other locations that I've been, where you just have to leave it in there.
Yeah. Lisa Price, what about your strategy?
I'm opposite of Howard. I'm going to avoid it like the plague, usually, because it doesn't earn what our other licenses typically earn, unless you have those unicorn, items that come along once in a lifetime, like Peeps in their heyday.
Yes.
Or, this year we might try Beetlejuice, because there's a new Beetlejuice movie coming out, and, he's kind of Halloween, so we can get away with that. We did Ghostbusters last year. So we'll do it when we have to. But typically, as a rule, it's hard to manage, multiple locations and multiple heads of seasonal merchandise. And we're in a lot of resorts. We just don't have storage room. So a box of Christmas sitting up, eating up space is pretty valuable.
Sure. That's something that if you don't sell it all, having to just have it take up space in your back room, or limited storage space, that's money right there. That's other inventory budget that could be spent on something else, and then the space that could be allocated to something else that you need and are going to sell 365 days of the year versus 30.
Yeah.
So if you were to put out any seasonal merchandise, kind of what timeline would you run for that? How far out ahead of the holiday or the event would you recommend starting to put that out, Howard?
I would say 6 weeks generally. It kind of depends. Like if it's Christmas, it really, Thanksgiving weekend. So it's a little bit less than 6 weeks. Valentine's Day, in the middle of January. Valentine's Day was always, at least on the route, which was primarily Walmart. Valentine's Day was the best by far. Like the cranes would do phenomenal for some reason. And then, but generally 6 weeks. And then 2 weeks before, I'm not putting any more in. I want everything in the machine. So it's gone.
Yeah. Sell through it, do limited quantities on it so that you're not having to store it, and then hopefully get it done before the holidays even actually over. Okay. Well, what are some of the more creative ideas that you guys have put into machines or seen put into machines? Whether it's like a decoration style or just like obviously everybody does plush or balls, but like, what are some of the other interesting ideas that you've put into machines? Lisa Price, let's start with you.
One of my favorites was we actually did a scent machine. So on top of the crane, which were little s'more plushies, they actually were scented. They had scent beads in them. We put a chocolate perfume basically, or a fragrance on top of the machine, and it dispersed that chocolate fragrance so that, you're creating you're kind of engaging all the senses. I mean, it was really decorated. It was the person that physically did the job did a beautiful job decorating the crane. But yeah, so we get pretty competitive with cranes. We'll fill them with coffee if it's a coffee themed crane. We actually just saw somebody did sand in one of our cranes. I don't recommend that, but it was, we have people out there trying all kinds of ideas. So, but I literally walk around stores going, what can I put in a crane? So.
I've seen some really interesting, creative ideas in a lot of your locations over the years. And I definitely take a lot of photos to share back to my team for inspiration. You guys do some really cool things.
Thanks.
Lisa Westerman, I know I have seen hats in machines at your facility. What are some other creative ideas that you've tried and that have been successful or unsuccessful?
Well, a couple months ago, my boss told me he wanted to put these canisters of cotton candy in one of the cranes, and he directed me to figure out a way to do it. We've got them in a grab and win crane, and I was 100% sure this would be a flop. That is the third or fourth highest crane every week. People want these canisters of cotton candy.
Just like the plastic canisters, like maybe about that big?
Yep, we just actually ran out. I'm going to have to figure out something else for the week. Yeah, I just was like stunned.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, back in the day, back when I was at a previous location, we got the little sand buckets that have the little sand tools in it for the summer, and we put a beach towel in the bottom of the crane. And we arranged all these things on the beach towel with a blown up beach ball that they couldn't win, but they could win all these little sand toys and stuff. And that was pretty popular.
That's so fun.
Yeah. But things like that. Sometimes we'll have a dinosaur crane and we'll run out. We have 2 dinosaurs left. So then my guys will get all wild and they'll put that in the middle of the bunny crane and they'll have the bunnies all facing in like they're attacking the dinosaur. And it's that kind of stuff. We like to have little eclectic, little fun things in the cranes like that. Right now, I have a case of Stan Lee plush, and he's doing his little cameos in all the cranes. There's one in this crane and one in that crane. So as they win something, they'll see a Stan Lee in there.
That's so fun. Howard, what are some creative things that you've seen or done?
So first I want to say, I love all those ideas Lisa just gave. And there are one thing I know for sure, and I wish there was a way. I can't think of how to measure it. So if someone has an idea, please shoot me an email. But there are people who are dedicated crane people, and they're usually adults, not kids, who will go to Lisa's place and they'll be looking for what she's done. What are the new things here? Like I know that from being on the route. Like there was people who collected dogs whenever you had new generic dogs, and there's people who collect things, and there's dedicated crane players. So when you're changing things up, like those people are playing way more than the typical person who gets a card and just like plays a little bit of everything. Like there's certainly dedicated crane people. One thing I loved that I saw from it was Midwest Coin Concepts, Chip O'Hare up in Minnesota. He does clings, so he does like these 3D. I think he has them done like a car cling, and they're like put like a basketball back there, and then do March Madness. But that thing on the back of the crane looks like 3D. So he'll do a football for football season and put Minnesota Vikings stuff in there. So I thought that was really cool. It's like the posters, but just taking it to another level. And I think they can reuse them. I can't swear to that.
That's a really neat idea. Just especially if it's something that they can reuse, pull off and do season after season. That's a good one. I like that one. Okay. Well, what I know it all has to do with the cost of the product, obviously. But how do you decide what you're going to charge per play? Like, what's the strategy behind that? Howard, I'm going to kick that one to you first.
Yeah, I would say that I like to test this all the time. So it depends on the item, but you have an interplay, right, between win rate and how much the machine costs. So if you charge more per play, you can afford to let them win more often. If that makes sense. So I think you should try different things and test them. Like you want your cost of goods to be like we like similar, like 20 to 25% in an FEC. A little bit more like in like when we were in Walmart or in a place where people are coming all the time. But try different things and measure it, because you'll find that it can vary depending on the item. So I don't like to have, with the one caveat that like for most community-based FECs where you have a lot of the same people coming, I don't like to have things too high, because I don't want a parent like to give a kid a $20 card and then I have a machine that costs I wouldn't want to have like a $10 per play crane where the kid goes and plays twice and then comes back. So in most places we're keeping it $3 and under. I don't know, Lisa Price may charge more in a resort, but for a community base, I don't want to be too high. And I can't stress enough how important it is to measure and try different things and see what works.
Thank you for sharing that. Lisa Price, you want to take that one now?
100% agree. You got to mess around with it, and it's really going to depend on the type of the location, the population that comes in. Even sometimes that changes. Like you just got to try. And then the other thing to keep in mind is if your cranes are too expensive, you're not hitting enough winners. The people that come back are always going to have that perception in their mind that they can't play any of your cranes because they're not going to win or they're too expensive. So you really got to mix it up. We've been playing a lot lately with, just really, really high win rates, like a 50% win rate, but we're using things that, have a high perceived value. They look nice. They were a good deal. We can leverage our buying power maybe, or we spend a lot of time picking out things that we know have a nice perceived value so that we can have more winners so they can walk around feeling really good with an armful of plush and we're all happy.
Lisa Westerman.
Well, that's exactly right. The perceived value is really important. We try to price based on, can we control the payout on this piece? Because some cranes, as we all know, are far more difficult to control how much the win is. I like to let people be able to win every time, but I don't want them to win everything because we can't give away the store. E-claws are great because you really can dial it in. Some things are a little more challenging depending on what's in it. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that we maintain our cost, but we want people to win. We really want people. My boss wants people running around with armloads of plush. That's what he wants. And so that's what we're trying to do. Like we have, when we have the Hello Kitty or the Smurfs right now, We have a really high payout on those cranes. It's come up to 40 to 50% on those because it's brand new cranes and people walking around with armloads of those items get people to play the other cranes. But for the most part, we try to keep it under $3 for certain, except for like the big cut to win like that might be more if we have a Nintendo plush or a Nintendo Switch or a big PlayStation or something in there, then that's a $5 play. But for the cut to wins, generally it's $3 and for the big plush, the big Nintendo plush or whatever. But most of the other ones are about $2.50 down to about $1. We have a couple for $1. We have new toy box cranes and we have little four players. You have little items in there. We have those at $1.50. I'm dropping it down to $1 a play now because the win rate isn't as high as I expected, and it's not expensive items. So they can win every 2 or 3 times, and we're still fine.
Okay, that was so interesting. I just love hearing how everybody does things similar, but also just kind of, obviously every business is different, so you've got to dial it in to your own needs. You mentioned the cut to win, and I think Lisa Price, you mentioned the Fantastic Prize earlier. So that's a newer machine, and everyone's been putting those in. Have they been performing well in your locations?
Yeah. For us, fantastic. Wordplay there, but yeah, they're fantastic. They're usually in the top 5, and that's even when we have banks of 2 or 3 of them next to each other. But yeah, they're really good winners. And what's good about those is you can get a little creative with the decor inside. You can put multiple items. You can theme out packages, and they don't take up a lot of square footage. So it's really they're really kicking in a good percentage of the revenue for taking up such a small amount of space. So that's a winner right there.
Lisa Price?
Oh, so we have 2 mega prizes and 1 cut to win, and we just got a timeout, which is a little different animal. But it's been kind of a mixed bag depending on what we put in. We had one completely themed out with the local soccer team, and that one just didn't get a lot of play. But when we had a PS5 in it, they stood in line to play it. So also we've separated them now to see how they do individually. I think they did better when they were together, so we'll probably move them back together. I get the big 80-inch Caterpillar sometimes, and we buy a set of the butterfly wings with the butterfly wings on the Caterpillar, and the kids just absolutely love it. So yeah, and because those you can really display that, it looks beautiful from the side, from the front, whatever. That's a way that you can theme it, but it just really depends on what you put in there. But you do have to theme those cranes. You can't just have one item in it and just all naked. It doesn't look as good.
So you're finding that like bundles or groups of items that are themed together perform better than just putting one piece of plush in those machines?
Yeah. So like right now we have a couple of pieces of the large Nintendo plush in. And they were in a hurry to put it in, so they just put it in. But when I go out there today, we have a big Yoshi. I'm going to put a bunch of little Nintendo plush around the bottom, so he's got friends, right? So
Cute.
That way, they're not just winning the one thing; they're getting all the little things too. And then you can have all these other little pieces. People think, "Oh, look at all the plush that they won," And those other little pieces don't cost all that much, but the perception is very important.
Yeah, they really feel like they're winning something special.
Yeah.
Howard, are you seeing a lot of your clients put those types of machines in, the cutter machines?
Yes, they do well. Typically, this what I'm looking at here is Mario, and it's the number 3 for the cranes and merchandisers. So it's really strong. And most of our clients are putting in big plush of some kind, either just a giant teddy bear or the giant Nintendo plush.
I keep hearing the Nintendo license come up over and over and over. Would you all agree that that's a pretty hot license to carry?
Yeah, yes. It's got good staying power.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're getting close to the end. You guys have already shared so many great little nuggets of wisdom. I'm going to end it with one question, and that's the following. What piece of advice would you recommend to other operators when they are, running their crane program? Lisa Price, let's start with you.
Don't be limited by price. A lot of the times you go to the vendors and they say, well, so and so only buys things in this price range. Don't limit yourself by price range. Limit yourself more by potential, of what those price ranges can do for you if you contribute to them. So don't limit your prices.
When you say don't limit yourself, would you recommend offering a pretty wide range of pricing within your range of machines?
Yep, we never pick as a rule by a dollar value. It's all on the perceived value and popularity of the item, but we never limit ourselves by the dollar amount. There's anything from 10-cent shoe charms to $300 gaming systems in our machines. So
that's a pretty wide range there, I would say.
Yeah.
Okay. Howard, what piece of advice would you give to operators?
So on this panel, I'm with some very experienced women who have done this for a long time, so they may find this shocking, but I work with a lot of people who are new. And I think that most locations don't know what their crane payouts are by machine. I think most of them don't, because the only way you can wire your card readers, but even then you need to verify because it's not accurate if you do that. And most of them haven't done that. So please keep track of your cost of goods by machine and your win rate and your payout, and document that information and look at it. It takes maybe an hour a week. You have to have someone keeping track of what they put in the machine with like a clipboard is the only way I know how to do it. Clipboard and a little piece of paper, and track those things and understand, because you can have a great sales on a machine and be giving away an obscene amount, or you can have a machine that doesn't pay out at all and people are stopping to play it, and you think it's the product, but it's the machine. So please buy machine, know what your payouts are.
Could you give just a real kind of quick and dirty rundown for those who might not know how to track that? Like, what would they look at, and kind of what would that, you mentioned an hour a week, what would that process entail?
So when you fill the machine, count how many pieces you put in. If you're going from a case of plus, and then count that, like that's full. So figure there's 100 pieces when the machine's full. Put a clipboard in there. So as someone fills it up during the week, they write down how many pieces they put in. And then the following week, you can, top off the crane. So if you put another 30 in, your machine, so then you know how many pieces you went through, times how much that piece costs, and then layer in the sales for the week, which you get from your card report, and you divide the value of the prizes that went out that week by the cost of the machine. So each machine has to have a clipboard where someone can write down when they're filling it throughout the week. And then I like to do it on Monday. Someone has to get all those sheets from the machines and compile them. But so each machine, what's in it and how much, what the payout was. That's a simple version. I have a form, so someone can email me, I can send you a blank one for you to do it with if you want, or I'll give it to you, Megan.
Yeah, that would be great. I will post that form in our operational toolkit, so folks can access that and use that. I think that would be a really helpful resource. Okay, last one. Lisa Westerman, what is the biggest piece of advice you would give?
I like the don't limit yourself. I'm going to say be creative, because you can do a lot more things in your cranes and merchandisers than you think you can. But if you have a redemption center in your facility, don't compete. Don't have the same thing at redemption that you have in your cranes. And if your crane gets a little stale, take it out, change it with something at redemption so that item goes to redemption, and you take the redemption item to your crane. And that way you're going to still have the same items, but people will play for things in cranes that they won't buy at redemption, and vice versa. So don't be afraid to try things. Don't be afraid to take things out that don't work. Because if it's not working, it's not making you money, it's not making you guests happy.
100%. And two, the chance of winning prize out of a machine, you know, potentially you could win it with one swipe of your card. More people, I think, would be apt to do that than to save up the 600, 700, 800 tickets that it would require to win that same or similar prize in redemption. So they'll have a little bit wider chance of actually leaving your facility with a prize.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Well, this has been so fun. Thank you guys. I really appreciate your time. I've learned a lot. I hope our viewers find this as helpful as I have. It's just been really great information. I appreciate you guys very much. Thank you all for watching. This has been Redemption Plus You.